Finally, we're going to respond to the most often asked question in ViceGrip Garage's history. Every man, it is said, has two lives, the second of which starts when he discovers he only has one. ViceGrip Garage's Derek Bieri experienced silent anguish, setbacks, and sacrifices in his second life. Derek's quest was based on more than simply horsepower, as seen by his experiences working alone and having his tools stolen. What became of Derek then? For what reason did the videos get shorter? What caused him to disappear from our screens? As we reveal the heartwarming tale of the man who almost lost himself while pursuing his ambition, stay tuned. The starting point. Derek Bieri was a young child in Bieri, North Dakota, before the world knew his name, before the cameras rolled, and before the engines roared back to life. Buried deep into the Midwest of the United States, there were no city streets, rolling cameras, flashing lights, or YouTube fans anticipating his next action. All that was visible were vast expanses of frozen terrain, boundless skies that engulfed the horizon, and a tiny child patiently figuring out how to put life back together, one broken item at a time. Bieri was not a town that fostered wealth or notoriety. Rather, it molded something much more durable. It molded fortitude. Grit was formed by it. It molded those who fixed what they had, worked with their hands, and bowed their heads in prayer. Derek's youth was devoid of metropolitan luxuries and buzzing technology. Rather, he heard the grumble of old equipment, the murmur of winter winds creeping beneath the doorframes, and the clinking of tools in a frigid barn. He was born on May 16, 1964, and grew up in a world where nobody ever came to your aid, and nothing came easily. You fix things when they break. You learned to live without it if you couldn't mend it. That was the only way, not just a way of life. Derek was attracted to everything that had wheels, gears, or grease, even as a small youngster. While other children ran after each other in the fields or played ball, he grew enthralled by the rust-covered machines in the background of his family's property. It was not merely a matter of attraction. Additionally, it was a matter of survival. On the farm, cars weren't toys or weekend pursuits. Rather, they were essential tools. They were essential. There was an engine for every purpose. Every tractor had to move as a result. All the trucks had to tow. Derek watched, wide-eyed and silent, as his family resurrected these lifelines. He learned slowly. He found that you can save time by using duct tape, realized that oil-stained fingertips were an indication of work, rather than guilt, and discovered that the quiet rumble of an engine was frequently the only source of warmth on a chilly morning. His father wasn't a talker, but he didn't have to be. No lecture could compare to the sound of every bolt they turned together. Derek crouched over antiquated engines, his breath shortening as he listened to his father's lessons growing up. He observed how his mother made do with little, spread meals out over several days, and never once grumbled about the strain. Due to a lack of time, they rarely discussed difficult events. The only thing left to do was to push through them. Derek took in all of the silent lessons without even recognizing it. He gained the ability to work with weary hands, create something out of nothing, and persevere when things didn't make sense. Only on the farmland is there a stillness. It's not quiet, it weighs a much. It stays long after the sun sets, deep into your bones. More than most, Derek felt that hush. When the chores were done, it encircled him. The world became silent as the horizon dwindled until dusk. Unlike our usual childhood, there were no neighbors, no surprise visits from friends, and no homework or school project parties. Rather, the only sound was that of fields, animals, machines, and distance. The loneliness was not a shouting type. It was the type that sat next to you, asking inquiries in hushed tones late at night, and waiting for unanswered questions. He became a part of that silent anguish. At the time, Derek had no word for it, but it left its mark on the man he was growing into. Derek found his buddies in the machinery, while other youths made friends in town. He studied rusting engines, while others played games. He discovered communication in motion where others sought conversation. The machines made no judgments. They stayed. They made no inquiries. They just waited. And Derek repeatedly came through for them. Self-reliance was not praised in Bieri culture. It was anticipated. Derek never asked for assistance as a child. He learned how to find the solution when the well stopped working, how to stand underneath a truck that had halted, how to take a crowbar, and how to open a slam door. He came to the realization that not everything requires a replacement at this stage. All it takes is expert hands to fix it. In that time of need, Derek understood the importance of making do. He somehow figured out how to bring disparate pieces together. He discovered a way to turn waste into solutions. Because of this, He took pride in doing any dirty work that no one else wanted to perform. Being reared among machines that are older than you has an emotional impact, to be honest. Every day Derek saw it. Tractors that had outlived their original drivers. Cars parked and neglected but never abandoned. Trucks handed down through the generations. In their quiet, these machines revealed tales. Derek could sense such stories even when he was too small to comprehend them. Every chipped dashboard, every sun-bleached seat, and every glove box filled with old receipts and faded pictures weighed a lot. These weren't merely automobiles, they were recollections. Derek also developed the inability to disregard memories, even when they were encased in rust. Rural living left a subtle but enduring emotional effect. It didn't yell, it was always there, but it didn't call for notice. Derek discovered how to conceal his pain. Emotion was out of place in the barn, he realized. He discovered that grief was not a shared experience. You carried it, so he got it. And he continued to walk. He continued to work. He continued to fix it. Because he could drown out the silent melancholy that always lurked just behind the trees and the sound of impact wrenches and the cadence of restoration. Dreams had to wait in mine. You weren't given a spotlight. No way was cleared. You worked hard to earn every inch. You earned it by being there before the sun came up, staying late, and not giving up. Derek had to work hard for everything. Fast tracks, favors, and bypasses were all unavailable. Only time, tools, and the unwavering conviction that nothing was too far gone to be saved. Derek was by himself. Nothing noteworthy or fascinating. Before anyone knew his name, he was knee-deep in something broken and hoped it would resurrect. Alternatively, Vice Grip Garage became a sanctuary for the forgotten. Vice Grip Garage? Why? I know this seems weird, but trust me when I say it's true. Vice Grip Garage was not founded by Derek Bieri with the intention of becoming famous or being named one of the world's wealthiest men. Rather, he began it because he had a concrete thing to provide. He spent his childhood using what little he had to mend obsolete autos. He noticed individuals online displaying pricey builds and sophisticated gear. However, most individuals in real life couldn't afford that. Derek wanted to present an alternative. He wanted to demonstrate that anyone with a few simple tools, a little know-how, and a lot of willpower could operate an ancient car. Because Vice Grip Garage mirrored his working style, he decided to employ it. Although they aren't the most sophisticated instruments, Vice Grips work well. His constructions were focused on that. He had no desire for perfection or haste. Even though it was a messy process, he was demonstrating how to take something broken and make it come back to life. He wanted to demonstrate that everyone, regardless of background or financial means, could accomplish it themselves. His videos were initially just short snippets of him fixing cars. His camera angles and lighting were simple. He was more concerned with the build than the spectacle. He weighed practical guidance against practical outcomes. Along the way, he would teach, explain through his approach, and laugh at his mistakes. He didn't fear making a mistake on television. People were able to relate to him because of his honesty. It gave the impression that anyone may enter the channel like a garage. Derek, however, felt the pressure of being observed behind the scenes. The judgment developed along with his channel. People had different ideas about his methods, his equipment, and even his speech patterns. While some viewers want perfection, others preferred more dazzling changes. In order to remain current, Derek felt pressured to follow trends. However, he was also aware that he would lose the motivation for his actions once he altered his identity for the sake of the beliefs. He so struggled to remain faithful. He made the decision to deviate from the norm. He declined to embellish repairs or fabricate drama. Because he believed in doing things the hard way, he continued to turn up with oil on his hands. Although there was genuine demand to entertain, Derek believed that truth and instruction were more important. Vice Grip Garage evolved into an environment where making mistakes was accepted. Knowledge was shared rather than sold, and trying was sufficient. Derek wanted more than to be watched. He urged them to try, learn, and make a change. That was his goal, and it continues to be his motivation today. Derek kept his heart concentrated and his head down the entire time. He never lost sight of his motivation. Fame was never the objective. Giving people confidence and demonstrating that you don't need a large store or a lot of money to revive something ancient were the goals. Of course, there was an inevitable cost to this ideal: the consequences of overcommitment and burnout. At one point, Derek Bieri was so exhausted from everything that followed the filming, the editing, and the never-ending rush to post the next video that he could hardly feel his hands, not from turning wrenches or fumbling with corroded bolts. Vice Grip Garage has developed impressively quickly. Few people could notice the tremendous weight, that accompanied such expansion from the outside. Derek was more than simply a vehicle mechanic. He was now a spokesperson, a businessman, a one-man production team, and the custodian of millions of expectations. The camera rarely stopped rolling, even when he was working on just a few hours of sleep. Some evenings he worked till dawn, not because he wanted to, but because he felt obliged to. There were people waiting. Deadlines had to be met by sponsors. YouTube's algorithm required that new videos be posted constantly. The statistics would drop if he slowed down, and if they did, everything could collapse. That pressure began to wear him down bit by bit. Viewers noticed that he seemed worn out during some of his live streams. He grinned and joked, but his eyes were different. The flame that had lit up his face started to fade. His voice would falter in the middle of sentences during multiple interviews. He would sit in silence for a while, thinking, then come back laughing and dismissing it. But more was communicated by those fleeting silences than by his words. Derek was spiritually and physically worn out. There was a deadline for each build. He didn't want to follow the script that was hidden behind every smile. The sponsors requested well-produced material. More intimate tales were desired by fans. The platform looked for hot titles, thumbnails, and engagement. A pause button was absent. No real break occurred. It was merely a man attempting to bear the burden of a growing empire on shoulders that were already under stress. His family also took note. Without any rest, the days stretched into weeks. They skipped meals. They ignored injuries. Between editing clips and answering comments, he found it difficult to get enough sleep. His passion, reviving vehicles, began to feel like a lovely, potent trap that gave him meaning, but robbed him of his tranquility. Pretending everything was fine was the most difficult aspect. Derek didn't want to disappoint the supporters who had faith in him, let anyone down, or jeopardize the sponsors who had covered the expenses. He therefore persisted despite his body's cries for rest, and his heart's pleas for silence. Burnout, however, is not quiet. Your hands shaking after too many sleepless nights is a sign of it. When your passion begins to seem like pressure, it shows in your tone, and it takes away your happiness and replaces it with fatigue. Derek continued to push, fix, and record. But at some point during those long travels and late nights, the price of overcommitment became unavoidable. It left its mark, and the toll was genuine. Fame versus family. Derek Bieri married his wife, Jessica, in 2008 before he became well known on YouTube. The couple's existence together was based on hard work, modesty, and simplicity. As their family grew, Derek became even more passionate about fixing old cars and sharing his expertise online. What began as a tiny YouTube channel swiftly expanded into a well-known brand. Vice Grip Garage became well known among car aficionados. But behind the growing number of subscribers and viral videos, there was a secret struggle going on at home. Developing a public character and raising a family are never simple tasks. Derek was in a number of scenarios after recording, editing, and engaging with a growing online following. He divides his days between pursuing content and being there for his children. Because of the prosperity that enabled him to support his family, they were in danger of being separated from him. His home, which was once a quiet, intimate retreat, became the scene of fan curiosity. Jessica supported him through it all, reassuring and steady. But they were fighting a real battle to protect their children from the harsh scrutiny of the internet. Derek became increasingly reluctant to show his kids on camera. He stopped mentioning their names and curtailed their appearances. He was aware of the potential drawbacks of the internet. For each fan who was encouraging, someone might have gone too far, made too many demands, or attempted to encroach on what ought to have been sacred. There is a burden associated with being a father in the spotlight. Derek hasn't said much about this dread, but his behavior makes a strong statement. He chose to give his kids the gift of a normal existence, free from algorithms and the pursuit of views, where many influencers blur the line. But the fear is still there. The dread of losing time with loved ones, time that eludes you while you are creating something for them. The fear of missing bedtime stories. The fear of missing the quiet little moments that never make it to camera. In many respects, Derek's greatest achievement is not only the vehicles he revives, but also the family he zealously defends. The decision to prioritize family before celebrity may never become popular or trend, but it is the most important one. You can all agree that change is never easy, especially when it involves saying goodbye to the starting point. Whether you're from Minnesota or Tennessee, Derek Bieri was born in Minnesota, but it was more than that. That's where Vice Grip Garage got its start. There, he discovered how to use ice-cold fingertips to turn a wrench in below-freezing conditions. This was the setting for the early videos. The frigid beginnings, the junkyard runs, and the long evenings spent in dark garages. But when the channel grew and life altered, the moment arrived to make an unthinkable decision. He had to leave. There was more to the move to Tennessee than merely a change of residence. It was a whole different direction. In a state full with landmarks, memories, miles of back roads and wrecked cars, Derek's family packed up and fled. It was a tough decision. He had to sell a lot of his collection, including cars he had put his heart and soul into, automobiles that told tales, projects that were never captured on camera. Each one had a piece of him, so letting them go was like tearing pages out of a journal. There were some quiet sales, just a handshake, a farewell, and a thick stillness followed no announcements. No send-offs. Back in Minnesota, the garage gradually drained. The decision was made for a more profound purpose. His family needed it. It was too small in the old garage. The harsh demands of producing material in a frigid area, coupled with the burnout he had been quietly fighting, made it obvious that something had to go. However, there was a cost. The relocation brought both joy and sorrow. His identity and origins were entrenched in Minnesota. To leave the land that molded him was to drive away. They carried the burden of saying goodbye at every turn on the way to Tennessee. It was not glamorous to start over. It meant finding new parts, people, and procedures, and beginning anew. On certain days, homesickness hit hard since the warmth of Tennessee could not make up for the chill of memories left behind. But Derek pressed on. Setting down the tool, he opened the boxes and created new blueprints and memories. The environment was unfamiliar. He had the same objective, but his view of the garage was different. Derek established fresh roots in Tennessee. He exchanged possibility for nostalgia. He clung to his family's support like a lifeline, bringing them along for the voyage. Despite leaving Minnesota behind, he brought its stories, lessons, and grit with him wherever he went. It was a tough but necessary journey, because sometimes you have to let go of things that have held you back in order to progress. And Derek had to follow that rule in order to start and grow Vice Grip Garage. Tool theft and the breach of trust. Tools are more than just items to Derek Bieri. They serve as his hands' extensions, representations of his trade, and vital characters in all of the tales he recounts in his garage. Every object has a location, a memory, and a purpose. As a result, a theft on his land involved more than just the loss of equipment. The place he had spent so much time building was shattered by a severe emotional blow. Shortly after Derek and his family relocated to Tennessee, it happened. The transition had been a huge leap, and his new garage was still being organized. He was sorting and unloading everything he had brought from Minnesota, including tools and rare vehicle parts that had been with him for decades and had seen him through every phase of his adventure. On one morning, he saw something odd. His tool chest had multiple drawers left open, and the welder cord was missing. He was shocked to learn that his old snap-on torque wrench, a number of sockets, and even a brand new Holley carburetor had all been stolen after careful inspection. His first impressions were warped by incredulity. Was it misplaced during the transfer? Is it possible that a friend or colleague accidentally took it? But as he returned and reviewed his tool inventory, reality began to set in. Someone had invaded his workstation, walked onto his property, and taken something that wasn't theirs. More than anything else, that realization hurt. Derek didn't respond in a dramatic way. He didn't vent his anger or level accusations online. Rather, as usual, he delivered it bluntly. He described what had transpired, while sitting in front of the camera, with the same cool candor that has won him millions of devoted fans. There was more disappointment than rage in his words. He talked about the stolen goods and the significance of the theft to him as a man who values honesty greatly, and as a maker and builder. His supporters reacted right away. Globally, comments began to pour in. People encouraged him, shared their stories, and even offered to send him new tools to replace the ones that had been taken. It was proof of his well-established society, built on understanding, respect, and real human connection. The other mechanics were particularly sympathetic. For them, losing a torque wrench meant more than simply losing a tool. It was the loss of a dependable partner in their trade. However, the incident did bring about a shift. Derek added surveillance cameras and new locks to increase security. The garage, which had previously been open, became more secure. He was still working and creating, but there was a new sense of caution. The store hummed with activity. But behind it all was a subdued reminder that not everyone is as considerate of your personal space as you are. Derek went on even though the stolen goods were never found. He remained dedicated to his family, his job, and his audience. The theft did not break him. Rather, he turned it into a lesson in fortitude. Every bolt and wrench in the world he lives in holds a fragment of his narrative. The true theft was losing trust. Like every automobile he revives, however, rebuilding it was a task he accepted. The hurt of shifting expectations and criticism. Demands increased along with Vice Grip Garage's growth. Grit, humor, and unvarnished honesty were the cornerstones of Derek Bieri's channel. His videos' uncensored quality, the sound of engines roaring to life, and the sight of grease-stained hands resurrecting ancient machinery were all adored by his fans. However, expansion was accompanied with criticism, and skepticism followed. Fans who had been watching for a while began to complain. The editing seemed strange, the jokes and builds were redundant, and the videos were too long. The early simple garage work was missed by some. Some argued that his earlier work's essence was missing from the more recent material. People started leaving comments asking if he was changing too much. While some said he was locked in the same cycle, others accused him of selling out. This struck close to home for someone who spent many hours on each frame. Derek had no intention of becoming famous on YouTube. All he wanted to do was help people learn and share his passion for cars. Every film required real money, real time, and real effort. He shot in chilly barns, in the sweltering sun, and under his own stress. Always, the objectives were to inspire, educate, and connect. However, no amount of passion could make him immune to the hurt of being let down by the people. He started to feel pressured to entertain all the time, and to come up with new ideas without alienating anyone. Derek experimented. He introduced new automobiles, added humor, and experimented with novel concepts. It still felt like a tightrope walk. If you make too many changes, you can lose your primary audience. Remain the same and face accusations of repetition. He struggled with feeling undervalued behind the scenes. The scathing comments persisted, but every watch, like, and comment counted. Even though he realized he would never be able to please everyone, he still found it difficult to accept the criticism. He began to wonder if the sacrifices were worthwhile, but he persisted. Despite the noise, Derek kept turning wrenches and pressing record. He remembered the folks who watched with their kids, helped him fix their first cars, and encouraged him believe in second chances. Despite the pain the criticism created, he chose to keep going because, at its core, Vice Grip Garage was still about perseverance, hope, and fixing something that had been damaged. What will happen to Derek next? Recently, enthusiasts of Vice Grip Garage realized something minor but crucial. These days, Derek Bieri doesn't post as frequently. The lengthy, invigorating builds that used to appear like clockwork now take longer to arrive. He is still active on YouTube, but it appears that he is less visible there. His time behind the camera is growing more cautious. The uploads are becoming less regular, and the updates are becoming more muted. For a creator who once thrived on constancy, this shift has not gone ignored. Some people question whether the platform's expectations have affected them. Derek has consistently stated that his family comes first. With a wife, 3 kids, and a house to run away from the limelight, he might just take a step back to get his bearings. His goal in moving to Tennessee was to make life easier. However, establishing a homestead, controlling material, operating a garage, and safeguarding his privacy are far from easy tasks. Some people think he might be changing. Derek might be looking for fresh approaches to storytelling or refocusing on longer-term, more ambitious endeavors. After years of scuttling beneath rusting frames, reviving junkyard antiques, and documenting every step for millions of people, the temptation to outperform the previous build can become intolerable. For creators like Derek, leveling up is often required, even if it means constantly burning out. Derek Bieri has been less active, yet his influence hasn't diminished. With millions of people still finding and revisiting its previous videos, Vice Grip Garage is still one of the most reputable and relatable automotive YouTube channels. Both seasoned mechanics and regular viewers, who enjoy a good comeback story, especially when it features an old automobile roaring back to life, are inspired by his distinctive blend of comedy, heart, and hands-on grit. Derek has been moving more slowly lately, has not gone unnoticed for months. However, a lot of supporters see it as a conscious change rather than a decline. Some see it as a sign of maturity. A man who has seen success and is now learning to put his family before fame, his life before hustling, and quality before quantity. Views are no longer his goal. He is defending the peace. Experience has cooled the spark, but it remains. Nevertheless, a silent query lingers in the background of each new upload, each week that is missed, and each post that seems more nostalgic than current. Is Derek just taking a break before starting a new creative endeavor? Or is he slowly abandoning the platform that made him a global household name among gearheads? Knowing that whichever path Derek decides to take next will be truly paved, we as fans watch in awe and anticipation. As admirers, we've seen him save forgotten dreams and wrecked cars. We wait and observe now, wondering what ride he will go on next. Is he penning the last chapter of ViceGrip Garage, or will he return with greater fervor and new ideas? What do you believe Derek will do next? Leave your most outrageous guesses in the comments section. I sincerely appreciate you viewing. For more videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like and share the video if you liked it. We hope to see you in our upcoming video.